Two grown men were laughing at a young woman trying to work out. The gym was packed, but no one said a word. That is, until Terrance stood up and made everyone stop pretending not to see. The smell of sweat and rubber hung in the air like always. Dumbbells clanked, treadmills hummed, and a few early risers grunted through their reps with headphones in. It was a little after 7 a.m. at Ironworks Fitness in Knoxville, Tennessee, a regular Tuesday for most. But for Terrance Roy, it was leg day. And leg day was sacred. He was just about done, wiping down the leg press, when he spotted her. She couldn't have been older than 25. Tall, athletic build, hair tied up, looking just slightly out of place like it was her first week in that gym. She hovered near the squat rack, clearly trying to figure out how to adjust the bar. Nothing unusual about that. Everyone starts somewhere. But then he noticed something else. Two guys, maybe mid to late 30s, white, both of them decked out in compression shirts they didn't need and confidence they hadn't earned. They weren't working out. They weren't even pretending. They just stood there, leaning on the preacher curl bench, watching her. At first it was subtle, whispering, a little snickering. But then one of them said loud enough for half the gym to hear, "Hey, sweetheart, that bar's heavier than you. You sure you don't need help?" The other one laughed, loud and sharp. She probably saw it on TikTok and thought she could just waltz in and lift like a pro. Terrance paused, towel still in hand. His body tensed. He'd heard that tone before, sarcastic, but with a hint of something worse. That blend of mockery and entitlement, the kind that makes you feel small without ever raising a fist. The woman didn't respond. She kept adjusting the bar, eyes focused ahead. But her hands trembled slightly. She took a breath like she was trying to hold something in. Terrance scanned the room. There were maybe 15 people there. Some heard it. He could tell. A man in a red hoodie looked down at his phone, pretending not to notice. A woman by the ellipticals shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. Nobody moved. Nobody said a word. He sat down on the nearby bench, watching for a second longer, and that's when it hit him. It wasn't just about those two idiots and their stupid comments. It was about everyone else, him included, watching it happen and saying nothing. This wasn't the first time something like this had gone down in a place like this. But maybe it was the first time he couldn't ignore it. He stood slowly, grabbed his water bottle, walked over. "Hey," he said, voice calm but firm. The two guys turned. One smirked. "You talking to us?" The taller one asked, eyebrows raised. Terrance nodded. "Yeah. You think it's funny harassing someone while she's trying to train?" The shorter one shrugged. "Relax, man. We were just joking." "She didn't laugh," Terrance said, turning slightly toward the woman. "Did you?" She shook her head, quietly. Now a few heads turned. A guy taking a rest between sets looked up. One of the staff members behind the counter leaned slightly forward, listening. The taller guy crossed his arms. "You her dad or something?" "No," Terrance replied. "Just someone who's tired of people thinking this kind of thing is okay." There was a pause. Heavy. Charged. But he didn't step back. "Look, man," the shorter one said, suddenly less smug. "We didn't mean anything by it." "Yeah," Terrance said. "That's the problem." But the room still hadn't reacted. And Terrance could feel there was more beneath the surface. There's a weird kind of silence that happens when people pretend not to hear something they definitely heard. It's like the whole room holds its breath, waiting to see how far it'll go before someone's forced to actually care. That's what it felt like at Ironworks. Terrance didn't move. Neither did the two men. The taller one, whose name, according to his bright blue gym badge, was Kyle, still had that tight smirk, like he was waiting for the punchline. But now his arms were folded in front of his chest, not so cocky. The shorter guy, Bryce, had taken a step back, like he wasn't sure if things were about to turn. Terrance wasn't there to fight. He didn't need to. His presence was loud enough. And for a man like him, 40, with 2 kids and 2 decades of keeping calm in uncomfortable spaces, He'd learned that sometimes just standing still was the loudest thing you could do. But he noticed something else, too. Nobody was stepping in. Still, some folks glanced up, then back down like they'd accidentally clicked the wrong show and wanted to switch the channel. Others looked uncomfortable, like they were hoping he'd just let it go and move on, and it burned him. Not because he expected backup, but because he realized how easy it was for people to disappear behind their earbuds or phone screens. The second things got complicated. One guy, probably mid-50s, sat on a bench pressing dumbbells. He shook his head. Not at Kyle or Bryce. At Terrance. Like he was the problem. Like speaking up was more offensive than the garbage being said in the first place. The young woman, still quiet, was now sitting on the edge of the squat rack platform, tying her shoe even though her shoe was already tied. Anything to stay busy. Anything to avoid eye contact. She didn't want to be part of this moment. But she already was. Terrance took a slow breath. He turned slightly, just enough so his voice would carry. "You all heard what they said, and you saw how she reacted," he said, not yelling, just speaking loud enough for the room to hear. "If someone talked to your sister, your daughter, your friend like that, would you still stay quiet?" Still nothing. Kyle opened his mouth like he had something slick to say, but nothing came out. Just a tight jaw and narrowed eyes. Bryce shifted again. "Look, man. Nobody's trying to start something here." Terrance nodded. "Then maybe don't." Behind the front desk, the gym manager, mid-30s, blonde ponytail, name tag reading Lauren, finally made her way over. She wasn't rushing, but she was clearly uneasy. Probably worried about complaints. Probably trying to read the temperature of the room before choosing a side. "Is everything okay here?" she asked, eyes flicking between the men. "Just clearing something up," Terrance said. Kyle spoke up. "This dude thinks he can tell us what to say to people now." Lauren looked at him, then at the woman still crouched by the barbell. She got it. Maybe not right away, but enough. "Well," she said carefully, "we don't allow harassment here. So if someone feels disrespected, that's something we need to take seriously." Bryce scoffed. "Harassment? We said one thing. One thing was enough," Terrance cut in. There was another pause. And then, slowly, Lauren turned to the young woman. "Are you okay?" she asked. The woman stood, quiet but steady. "I just came to work out," she said. "That's all," Lauren nodded. "Understood. You're welcome here. If anyone gives you a problem again, let us know." And that was it. The tension didn't break with a big moment. There was no fight, no dramatic scene, no applause. But something had shifted. Bryce and Kyle exchanged a look. Then, without another word, they walked off toward the locker room, muttering under their breath. Nobody stopped them. Nobody needed to. Terrance turned and caught the woman's eye. She gave him the smallest nod. Just enough to say thank you without saying it. But what stuck with him more than the confrontation was the silence, the looks, the way everyone else made themselves small in that moment. He kept thinking, what would have happened if he hadn't been there? But the day wasn't over yet, and the story was just starting to leave the gym. Terrance was halfway through filling his water bottle at the fountain when he heard the voice behind him. "You feel like a hero now, huh?" He didn't turn around right away. He recognized the voice. Kyle. That same mocking tone from earlier, now stripped of an audience, sounding smaller, more personal. Terrance calmly twisted the cap back on his bottle before facing him. Kyle stood there alone, arms slack, the edge in his expression replaced by something that looked like bruised ego. Maybe embarrassment, maybe just the frustration of not getting the last word. "I'm not here to be a hero," Terrance said. "I'm here to work out, just like everyone else." Kyle took a step closer. "You made a big deal out of nothing. She didn't even say anything. You jumped in like she needed saving?" Terrance leaned slightly against the wall, still calm. She didn't need saving. But she didn't deserve to be mocked either. You made her uncomfortable on purpose. Kyle scoffed. "Oh, so now you're the feelings police?" Terrance tilted his head. "Nah, Just a grown man who's tired of seeing people pretend it's okay to act like clowns in public. Kyle's jaw tensed. You don't know me, and you don't know her, Terrance replied. But that didn't stop you from talking. There was a moment, a real one, where Kyle just stood there, blinking. Like part of him wasn't used to anyone pushing back without yelling, without swinging. Just facts, just a mirror. Then Kyle looked around. The hallway outside the locker rooms was quiet, just them and the low hum of a treadmill belt nearby. You people always gotta make it racial, he muttered. Terrance felt it. That shift, that old, tired line, meant to flip the blame, meant to derail. He kept his voice steady. You brought race into it when you thought she was an easy target. You thought nobody would say anything. That's not on me. Kyle didn't answer. I've been in places like this all my life, Terrance went on. And I know when something's just a joke, and when something's about putting someone in their place. Still silence. Then Kyle let out a tight breath and muttered, Whatever, man, before turning toward the locker room. Terrance watched him go, then shook his head slightly. Not in anger, not in victory, just clarity. He wasn't interested in humiliation. He didn't need a public win. What mattered was that someone heard him. That Kyle, even if he didn't want to admit it, felt it. And just then, a voice behind him. Softer this time. Hey! It was the young woman. She'd changed her shirt, had her hoodie pulled halfway over her head. Thank you, she said, voice almost a whisper, for saying something. Terrance gave a small smile. You're welcome. I didn't know what to do, she added. I just froze. That's okay, he said. You don't owe anyone a reaction. That's the thing nobody tells you. Sometimes just making it through moments like that is enough. She nodded. I'm Janelle. Terrance. They shook hands. You come here often? She asked, almost laughing at how cliché it sounded. 3 times a week, he said. Early. Before work. She smiled. Guess I'll start coming early too. And with that, she headed toward the exit. No tears, no big emotional scene. Just a moment of grace between 2 strangers who now shared something. But while that chapter closed, something else had already started to ripple outside those gym walls. By the time Terrance got home that evening, the kids were already halfway through dinner, and his wife, Sonia, was balancing a laptop on one knee while coaching their youngest through spelling homework. The usual weekday chaos. It grounded him, reminded him that real life doesn't pause just because something heavy happened a few hours earlier. But the weight followed him through the door. He tried to leave it at the gym, tried to let it fade behind the steering wheel. But moments like that don't always stay where they happen. They hitch a ride with you, quietly. How was the gym? Sonia asked without looking up, scooping mashed potatoes onto a plate for their son, Caleb. Terrance hesitated. Weird, actually. That got her attention. She looked up, eyebrows raised. He told her everything. Not dramatized, not exaggerated, just the facts. What Kyle and Bryce said. How nobody stepped in. How he finally did. Janelle's reaction. The awkwardness. The silence. Sonia listened, chewing slowly, her eyes focused. When he finished, she leaned back and exhaled through her nose. Sounds like the usual, she said. Not dismissively, just tiredly. A familiar exhaustion. I know, Terrance said. But something about today stuck. You mean the fact that you were the only one who said anything? She asked. Yeah, that. And he paused. I saw how many people heard it and still said nothing. Because that's how it goes, she said, getting up to rinse a plate. People stay out of it. They don't want the awkwardness. They're afraid to say something and get pulled in. Or worse, they think it's none of their business. He nodded slowly. It shouldn't be normal. It shouldn't, she agreed. But it is. Later that night, once the kids were asleep and the house had quieted, Terrance scrolled through his phone. Notifications lit up from a local Facebook group he followed. Knoxville Fit Life Community. Someone had posted about the incident. Saw something wild at Ironworks today. Some dude stood up to a couple guys who were clowning on a new girl at the squat rack. Didn't get violent or anything. Just called them out. Respect. It had over 100 comments already. Some people praised the guy. Others asked what happened. A few took the usual route. You don't know the full story. Everyone's too sensitive these days. People can't take a joke anymore. Terrance didn't comment. He just watched the conversation grow. Someone even uploaded a short clip, just a shaky 3-second phone video of him standing in front of Kyle and Bryce, his back to the camera. No audio, just a still shot of a man refusing to budge. He didn't like being at the center of it, not because he was embarrassed, but because it distracted from the point. This wasn't supposed to be about him. It was supposed to be about how easy it is for garbage behavior to pass when no one says a word. The next morning at the gym, things were different. Janelle was there again. She gave him a fist bump this time, a grin on her face like they'd been gym buddies for years. And people were watching, not in a bad way, just watching. A couple nodded at him, not the performative kind, but like they'd been thinking about it too. Lauren, the gym manager, came over quietly after he finished a set. "Hey," she said, "thanks again for yesterday." He looked at her. "We've had issues before," she continued. "People saying things they think are harmless. This time, people are talking about it. Maybe it changes something. Maybe," he said. Then, just as he was grabbing his towel, a man from the back, mid-60s, wiry build, grey in his beard, walked over. "I was here yesterday," he said. Terrance raised an eyebrow. "Yeah?" The man nodded. "Didn't say anything." "Should've. I've got 2 granddaughters. I keep thinking, if that were one of them, I'd want someone like you nearby." Terrance didn't speak right away. Then, "Appreciate that." The man gave a half smile. "Name's Roland. If you ever need a spot, I'm around." But what Terrance didn't expect was who would walk through the doors next, and what he had to say. Terrance wasn't expecting anyone specific when the gym doors opened late that Friday afternoon, but there he was, Bryce. No Kyle, no swagger, no smirk. Just a man walking in with headphones around his neck and something in his eyes that wasn't there before. Terrance clocked him the second he walked in. He wasn't sure if Bryce would ignore him, try to start something again, or pretend the other day didn't happen. But Bryce didn't pretend. Instead, he walked right up after Terrance had finished his warm-up set on the lat pull-down. "Hey," he said, voice lower than before. "You got a minute?" Terrance didn't answer right away. He kept his hand on the machine's handle, searching Bryce's face for any sign of sarcasm. But there was none. "All right," Terrance said. "Go ahead." Bryce shifted his weight from foot to foot. "I talked to Kyle," he began. "He thinks you embarrassed us on purpose. Still mad, but me? I've been thinking." Terrance said nothing. "I got 2 boys," Bryce went on. 10 and 8. They were at the park the other day, and I saw this older kid giving them a hard time. Nothing major, just pushing their buttons. And I realized, I froze. I didn't know what to say. I just, watched. He paused. And I remembered how I didn't say anything here either. When we were messing with that girl. I mean, we were messing with her. There's no other way to put it. Terrance watched him. "So now what?" "I just wanted to say, you were right," Bryce said, eyes steady. "I don't want to be that guy. Not for my kids to see. Not for myself." Terrance leaned back slightly. "It's not about being right. It's about knowing when to stop being the person you'd never want to run into." Bryce nodded. "Yeah, that." They stood in silence for a moment. Just 2 men in gym clothes, under fluorescent lights, talking like it mattered. "I'm not going to apologize for Kyle," Bryce added. "He's got his own stuff to figure out. But I do apologize for what I said, for how I acted." Terrance extended his hand. "I accept that." They shook. Firm. Brief. Real. Later that evening, Terrance sat on the porch with his daughter, Elise, who'd just turned 14 and had recently taken an interest in running. She asked him what happened at the gym. She'd heard her mom mention something in passing. He hesitated, then told her. He kept it simple, but didn't sugarcoat it. The words, the silence, the confrontation, the apology. He watched her face as he spoke, saw how her expression changed with each beat of the story. "So you just..." Talked to them? She asked, eyebrows raised. Yeah, he said. I didn't yell, didn't make a scene. I just asked them why they thought that kind of behavior was okay. And that worked? It didn't change them right away, but maybe it made them think twice. That's how most change starts. Elise looked down at her sneakers, twisting the laces in her fingers. I don't know if I'd be brave enough to say something like that, she murmured. Terrance smiled. That's the thing. You don't feel brave when you do it. You just feel like someone has to. She looked up at him, eyes soft but full of something else now. Maybe pride. I'll try, she said quietly. You don't have to try, he replied. Just pay attention. When something doesn't feel right, don't ignore it. Speak up if you can, or be there for someone who can't. They sat in silence for a while after that. No rush to fill the air, just the kind of silence that feels full instead of empty. But Monday was coming, and someone unexpected still had something to say before this story would feel complete. Monday morning started the same as any other. Terrance parked in his usual spot, swiped his gym card at the front desk, and made his way to the free weights. He wasn't expecting anything new, just a regular start to the week. Then he saw him. Roland, the older guy who'd said a few words to him days earlier, was waiting by the dumbbell rack, stretching out his shoulders like he was prepping for a long set. Except today, he wasn't in workout gear. He wore jeans, boots, and a dark jacket zipped up halfway. Not here to train. He was waiting. Got a minute? Roland asked, looking up as Terrance approached. Terrance nodded. Yeah. They walked toward the small lounge area by the vending machines. The gym was quiet, and nobody paid them much attention. Roland rubbed his hands together like he wasn't sure where to start. I've been thinking about what happened, he finally said. What you did, what you said. Terrance didn't interrupt. Roland continued. I'm 66. I've seen a lot of garbage in my time. I grew up in Ohio in the 60s. My old man ran a tire shop. We weren't rich, but we got by. I remember when the schools integrated. I remember the tension. But we didn't talk about it at home. Ever. He paused. And because we didn't talk about it, I didn't know how to act when something happened. I'd see stuff. At work. Out in town. And I'd tell myself, well, that's not my problem. I thought silence was staying neutral. Turns out it never was. Terrance listened, not saying a word. Roland's voice dropped slightly. The day you said something to those guys, I was right there. I was 2 benches over. I heard every word. Terrance nodded slowly. I figured you did. I wanted to say something. I really did. But my mouth just didn't open. I sat there like a damn statue. He shook his head. And I've been kicking myself ever since. Terrance leaned forward. You're here now. That counts for something. Roland let out a breath. I've got grandkids. 2 girls, 1 boy. The girls are mixed. My daughter married a black man. Good guy. Teaches 6th grade. And I keep thinking about them. If they were in that gym, if someone talked to them like that, I'd want a Terrance around. Someone who didn't stay quiet. The room felt heavier now. Not in a bad way, just fuller. I've said things in the past I'm not proud of, Roland admitted. Let stuff slide I shouldn't have. But I'm trying to be better. That's why I came today. Just to say thank you. And to let you know I'll speak up next time. No more sitting on my hands. Terrance finally smiled. That means more than you probably think. They shook hands again. This one felt different. Not a thank you handshake. A we see each other now handshake. I might even start working out again, Roland added with a chuckle. Terrance grinned. Start with light weights. Don't go breaking something. They both laughed, and the tension in the air finally eased. After Roland left, Terrance stood by the mirror wall, towel over his shoulder, and just watched the room for a moment. Same gym, same walls. But it felt changed. Not because everyone magically became better overnight, not because racism disappeared, but because something small had shifted. One person spoke, another listened, a third changed their mind. It wasn't everything, But it was something, and sometimes something is all it takes to move things forward. But even with all that, the real lesson didn't hit until Terrance saw what his daughter posted later that night. It was around 9:30 when Terrance finally sat down on the edge of his bed, shoes kicked off, lights dimmed, the soft hum of the hallway fan in the background. Sonia was reading, legs curled under the blanket, her glasses sliding down her nose. He grabbed his phone to check a few messages before bed, and that's when he saw it. A new post from Elise. He clicked. It was a selfie. Nothing special, her hair pulled back, no filter, wearing her school hoodie. But it was the caption that stopped him. My dad stood up for a stranger this week. He didn't yell. He didn't throw hands. He just spoke up. And that was enough to make people think. Including me. I used to believe keeping quiet made you neutral. But I was wrong. Silence has a side. I hope I'm brave like him when it matters. Terrance blinked at the screen. Not because he was shocked by the words, but because they sounded so sure, so clear. And they came from her, his teenage daughter, the one who used to get nervous asking the server for ketchup, the one who once cried when she had to read a poem in front of her class. And now she was putting words like that out into the world. He looked over at Sonia and handed her the phone. She read it in silence, then smiled without looking up. You realize she's watching everything you do, right? Terrance exhaled. I'm just trying to get through the week most of the time. Well, she said, placing the phone on the nightstand. You're doing better than that. He laid back, staring at the ceiling, letting the moment sit. Everything that had happened in the last few days, Kyle, Bryce, Janelle, Roland, Elise, it had started with one choice. Not a big one, not a dramatic one. Just a decision to say something instead of nothing, that's all. And that's what stuck with him most. People always think you have to be fearless to take a stand. But that's not true. Most of the time you're scared. You're unsure. You don't want to be the one making things uncomfortable. But if you stay quiet, someone else pays the price. He remembered Janelle's face when she said she froze. He remembered the way Roland rubbed his hands together when he admitted he didn't know how to act. He remembered Bryce, trying to find the words to say sorry without sounding weak, and he thought, this is how it starts. Not with grand speeches, not with internet outrage, but in real places with real people who choose to do the slightly harder thing. The next morning, Terrance sat in his car in the gym parking lot for a moment before going in. Not to hype himself up, just to think. Then he pulled out his phone and typed something. It wasn't meant to go viral. It wasn't even written to get likes. It was just a truth he felt like putting out there. You don't need a big moment to make a difference. Just don't look away when something's wrong. Say something, even if your voice shakes, even if you're alone. That's how things start to change. He hit post, then got out of the car. Another Monday. Another workout. But with a little more weight off his shoulders than before. If you're watching this and thinking, I've been in a moment like that, you're not alone. And if you froze before, don't beat yourself up. You'll get another chance. The real question is, next time, what will you do? Speak up. Even if it's uncomfortable. Even if it's small. Because silence might protect your comfort. But it won't protect someone else's dignity. And someone near you might be waiting for a voice like yours. If this story resonated with you, share it. Leave a comment. And remember to subscribe, because we need more stories about what doing the right thing really looks like.